There have been so many Cinderella teams and players who have come out of nowhere in 2021, but I don't think any of them are more random than Kenny Pickett. In case you didn't know, Pickett was always destined to be a great quarterback, but his skill set never fully showed. He originally committed to a different school coming out of high school, was under-recruited, and was told he would never play in the NFL. Now, it looks like he could be a first-round pick. In his first few years with Pitt, he was kind of underwhelming. He won some games, he was a solid starter, and was a quality quarterback. But he never put up big numbers or won those big games. In 2021, everything has been different. He's broke all his records, he has Pittsburgh ranked and competing for an ACC championship, and now he could be one of the frontrunners for the Heisman Trophy. In today's video, I want to talk about the rise and journey of Kenny Pickett, how his college career has gone so far, what I expect for him next, and if he could be a big-time NFL player. But before we get into today's video, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel for this upcoming season, and we can do better than that. So be sure to hit that button, smash that like button for the algorithm, turn on post notifications, and let me know another player or topic I could do next. Now, let's get started and talk about Kenny Pickett. In order to understand how Kenny Pickett became a big deal, let's first go back in time. We need to meet his father. His name was Ken, and he was actually a former Division II All-American at a school called Shippensburg University. He played there in the 1990s, and when he had his son Kenny, he immediately flocked to sports. He loved pretty much everything and was super competitive as he played AAU basketball, pitched in the Little League, and was a quarterback in Pee Wee football. From the time he was 5 years old, he always had a ball or a bat in his hands, and he said his dream was to play in the NFL. He was serious about this, and throughout middle school, he really started to blow up. His dad was great at football, obviously. He felt Kenny needed a real quarterback's coach if he ever wanted to play college. That's why they went to a guy named Jim Contafio, and he was a local legend in the Pennsylvania area, and they would drive 2 hours to see him. Ken was a little worried this would mess up Kenny's childhood, though, and had this to say, quote, "For me, that was something Kenny wanted to do. I tell everyone, if Kenny just wanted to not play football, or if he wanted to do something else, then that would have been fine with me. But he had the desire, and I would say from 6th to 7th grade on, he had his mind made up on what he wanted to do. At this point, though, he would have to choose between the sports, and basketball would be the first one to go. He then decided to focus on football and baseball would eventually take a seat too. The quarterback coach said the talent and the mentality was there. However, though, no matter how hard Kenny worked, he had one thing going against him, and that was his height. To be a big-time quarterback, you need to have the height, and Kenny just didn't have that as he was below 6 foot. At this point at Ocean Township High School, he was playing really well and was one of the better quarterbacks in the area, but if he was ever going to blossom into that guy, he would have to grow. After waiting and waiting, it finally happened. His dad said, quote, "That was the biggest thing that Casey and I were waiting for. You know, he was a late bloomer. He didn't really grow until his junior year, where he grew 6 or 7 inches. And every year before that, he was only growing like 1 to 2 inches per year." Kenny now had the size, and now he had the stats. In 2015, he led Ocean Township High School to a 10-2 record, throwing for nearly 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, while also rushing for over 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. He started to get a ton of low FBS offers, and he had a connection with the Temple Owls. That's why he decided to commit there. They were pretty close to home, they were a pretty solid American school, and he'd probably have the opportunity to play pretty quickly. Then Kenny had a decision to make as he started getting recruited by their schools, and he decommitted. He said, quote, "I didn't think it was right to be communicating with other coaches and visiting schools while I was committed to Temple, and I needed to see all my options." It would come down to Pitt, North Carolina, Iowa, and Boston College in the end, and he really took a liking to Pitt's offensive coordinator, Matt Canada. He also loved the facilities and the university itself. Pat Narduzzi played a big role, and even having the Steelers right down the street were a part of things too. He decided to commit to Pitt, and he was under the radar. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 3-star recruit, the number 33 pro-style quarterback, and the 738th best player in the class of 2017. He had his eyes on Dan Marino's record when he walked in, and he wanted to bring an ACC championship to Pittsburgh. Going into 2017, Narduzzi was in his 3rd year as the head coach at Pitt, and the 2 quarterbacks were going to be Max Brown and Ben DiNucci. Luckily for him, Max Brown would end up getting hurt, and DiNucci would struggle, so Pickett would finally have an opportunity to play late in the year. There also wasn't much to play for, as going into their final game against number 2 Miami, Pitt had only won 4 games on the year, and there was no way they were going to make a bowl. This game was huge. Pickett would make his first career start, and the number 2 undefeated Miami Hurricanes would lose at Heinz Field. This was the day after Thanksgiving, and one of the biggest wins in Pittsburgh history. Pickett solidified himself as the guy moving forwards, and apparently the team really bought into everything he was saying. That year, Pickett threw for 500 yards and 1 touchdown, and also ran for 2 more scores on the ground. People expected Pitt to take a step up in 2018, and they did. While they did lose 4 of their first 7 games, Pickett would lead them on a run as they beat Duke, number 23 Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest, and this would clinch them a spot in the ACC Championship. That was really weird, and they would get matched up against the number 2 Clemson Tigers in that game. While they would get killed 42-10, Pickett had led them to the ACC Championship game, which is what he always wanted to do. As a sophomore, his numbers were pretty underwhelming. He only threw for 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns, and also had 6 interceptions along the way. Keep in mind, this was also in 14 games. Expectations were going to go up for him in 2019, and you could say it improved. He had now passed for over 3,000 yards, but he only had 13 touchdowns, and he had 9 costly interceptions. It didn't seem to affect Pitt's record that much though, as they only lost 5 games in 2019 and beat Eastern Michigan in the Quick Lane Bowl. 2020 was expected to be Pickett's last year, and despite everything getting screwed up, he still had an okay year. He did have 4 interceptions in their loss to Clemson, but he still passed for 2,400 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. The one thing that did improve was he had 8 touchdowns on the ground. You could see the potential there with Pickett, but he just wasn't putting it all together. Despite the underwhelming numbers, he was seen as an NFL draft prospect, and after talking to his dad, he decided to come back for his senior year. His dad said, quote, "If you hear him talk, he's always talking about bringing a championship back to Pitt. That's kind of what his motivation is, and he doesn't care how he gets it done, but his goal was to win an ACC championship, and it's been that way since he's been here." He was right, as now in 2021, Pickett has put everything together. A lot of credit needs to go to their offensive coordinator Mark Whipple, as he came in and changed everything for Pickett and really helped develop him. So far in 2021, Pickett has gone off. In their first game against UMass, he threw for nearly 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then in week 2 against Tennessee, he combined for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards in their road win against the Volunteers. Things got weird in week 3 as they played a pretty good Western Michigan team at home, and despite nearly 400 yards from Pickett and 6 touchdowns, they lost 44-41. This was tough, but he combined for 6 more touchdowns in their next game against New Hampshire, and then had 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in a road win over Georgia Tech. This is when he started to put his name on the map, and a 3-touchdown performance and a win over Virginia Tech also helped them. This past weekend is when things really started to blow up for Pickett. They had Clemson at home. He said this is the kind of game he came back to play in, and you could say Pickett showed the world what he's made of. He didn't have a 6-touchdown performance by any means, but he threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and helped defeat the biggest brand in the ACC, give Pittsburgh one of its biggest wins in a long time, and now the Panthers are surging towards the ACC championship. Pickett has blown up when it comes to the 2022 NFL Draft, as a lot of the big quarterbacks have struggled, and he is putting his name on the map. So far in 7 games, Pickett has thrown for 2,236 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. Not only is he throwing the rock, but he's throwing it accurately, he's throwing touchdowns, and he's not turning it over. I'm extremely excited to see how he's going to finish the year, and they have a couple fun games remaining. Someone else who has benefited greatly from his play has been wide receiver Jordan Addison. He has 40 catches for nearly 700 yards and 10 touchdowns, and he's becoming one of the best receivers in the country, and he could be a big-time NFL draft prospect as well. When you take a look at who Pitt has left, they play Miami at home this weekend, then they go on the road to Duke, have North Carolina and Virginia at home, and finish the year at Syracuse. None of those 5 games seem ultra dangerous, but with how weird the ACC is, and their loss to Western Michigan, I'm worried they might drop one. Still though, Pittsburgh is at the top of the Coastal Division, and I think the Virginia game is going to determine how it all goes. I absolutely love Pickett, and there are a lot of rumors he could go to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 2022 NFL Draft, and I think that would just be fun. He's from the area, he went to Pitt, and now he could save the potential franchise down the street. Pickett has one of the best stories in college football, and he's been one of my favorite players so far, and it's only going to be more fun, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Let me know what you think though. How good is Pittsburgh football? How good is Kenny Pickett? And who are the top quarterbacks for the 2022 NFL Draft right now? Be sure to let me know that, another player I can do a feature on, and don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.